Good people YouTube, I'm the Watch Idiot, and yes, here we have my BB41 Monochrome, a watch that somehow seems to have taken away the thunder from one of the most anticipated watches from Tudor, the BB58 GMT. To be fair, I still really want the BB58 GMT, being a GMT guy, but this monochrome here has been growing on me for a while with doubt, but after trying one on, I knew that I had to take a chance and get one, and the experience has been much more interesting than I thought it would have been for a watch that is kind of boring in many ways. So in this video, I'm going to get into the dimensions, how it wears on the wrist, and all the different aspects of the watch, including the 5-link jubilee-esque bracelet, and how I feel about the watch as a guy who owns the BB54 in Pelagos and has owned the BB58 Blue, 925 BB Pro, and the BB41 GMT. So yeah, let's just get into it. First up, as always, we have the dimensions just so we know what we're dealing with here. The case width is actually 40 millimeters and it's the bezel that's 40.6 millimeters, a little bit bigger, but still nothing on the watch that's actually 41 millimeters. But going on, we have a lug width of 21 millimeters, tapering down to 16 millimeters at the clasp, so 5 millimeters of taper is very nice. And then we have a thickness of 13.5 millimeters, including the domed sapphire crystal. And here it is next to the BB54, the BB58, and the Pelagos for reference. And as you can see, that size-wise, it slots right in, although despite it technically being 1 millimeter smaller than the Pelagos and 2 millimeters larger than the BB58, it definitely looks and wears more like a slightly bigger BB58 versus a smaller Pelagos, which is a good thing, I think. In other words, it's a small 41, more like a 40 millimeter watch, honestly, because the dial is smallish and the indices are closer to the inside visually, even compared to the BB58. And side by side with the BB58, it's weirdly hard to see the size difference, which I wasn't expecting. And on the wrist, the story is the same. It really wears like a slightly bigger BB58. So I think that this is going to be a really great new option for those who might think that the BB58 is just a bit too small for them, or for those who want just a more modern wearing, clean black Bay. And by the way, I'll be doing a more in-depth look at how this BB41 Monochrome fits within the range and also compare it to all the other watches. So yeah, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. And the other specs include a 200 meter water resistance and a META certified movement and watch, which means that it's accurate to 0 to +5 seconds a day, so no average loss per day, which is very good for me. And it's also resistant to 15,000 Gauss, so very anti-magnetic. Just for reference, according to Monochrome, 15,000 Gauss is what you find in an MRI, or it's the strength of a coin-sized magnet that can pick up 9 kilograms. Something this big, 9 kilograms. That's just, oh my God. So all this testing plus cost certification, a thinner case, and a T-fit clasp, and Tudor is only charging $325 extra over the standard BB41. That's it. I mean, no, how can you argue with that? That is value right there. I mean, bravo, I was about to say Seiko. Bravo, Tudor. I usually talk about the dial first, but here the main story is the updated case and partly the bezel as well, because the previous generation BB41 was 14.7 millimeters thick, which just doesn't work for me, or for many people, to be honest, because of the slab size. I mean, it just looks and feels insane on the wrist. I mean, I own the BB41 GMT, which was 14.6 millimeters, and I had to return it, which is the first time I ever had to do that. And it just wore just so massively and so thick. And I've worn my fair share of thick watches. I love my Marine Master 300, and also I have the Darth Tuna. The Pelagos is also pretty thick as well. But yeah, on the BB41, it just, no. This new META version that came out last year got the thickness down to 13.6 millimeters, which doesn't sound like much, but there is more to it just because Tudor also adjusted the proportions of the mid case to be a bit more submarinary, meaning that the case back gets a touch thicker, which reduces the thickness of the mid case, which is what really affects the visual thickness of a watch. That said, it doesn't feel like it's just floating on your wrist because they made the lugs come down a bit more to make sure that the case and bracelet flow well into the wrist. And these adjustments made all the difference. I was shocked when I wore the burgundy version last year for the first time, and the same thing remains with this monochrome version, because when I look at it on my wrist, I don't think, oh God, it's a thick watch, but I guess it's manageable. I just look at it and see just a nice solid watch. As for the case itself, it's what you would expect from Tudor. It's simple and the brushing is well done, as are the polished sides. And other than that, there really isn't too much to it. And finally, the bezel. The grip has pointy teeth versus Black B54's squared off teeth, and the classic Tudor bezel action is second only to the sub. I mean, it is easily the best 60-click bezel I have felt ever. And the same thing applies to all Tudor dive watch bezels that I've owned. It's just pure refinement. And the insert is a black aluminum bezel with silver writing. And I know that there are going to be people who complain saying that, oh, I can get like a ceramic insert for like 3 cents or something like that. But to me, the decision between aluminum and ceramic isn't a matter of cost most of the time. It's a matter of design. A shiny ceramic bezel would pretty much, I think, look idiotic here, whereas a matte aluminum bezel, which has its own look, adds to the inherently more vintage aesthetic of the Black Bay line, even though this version is decidedly much more modern looking. To be honest, most of the time I prefer the look of matte aluminum. And now the dial, and if you're familiar with Tudors, then you know pretty much exactly what you're getting in terms of design at least. But first off, it's nice to see that there's only 2 lines of text here, water resistance and master chronometer. I usually don't have a big issue with more lines necessarily, although my Pelagos with 5 lines is a bit much, but you know, 2 lines here is the move here. The hands and indices are polished, and the hour hand is classic snowflake hand, standard Tudor fare. It's all well executed, and the dial itself is matte black, although it does have a subtle sunburst finish that you can see only in like very certain lights, not that often. Majority of the time, it's just going to be a matte black dial, which is what I would want from a watch like this. But just seeing that little subtle sunburst every once in a while is a nice touch. My Black Bay 54 has a subtle sunburst effect, although the finish seems finer and it shows up a bit more often than it does on the Black Bay 41. And like I said, I'm glad that this is the case, because the Black Bay 41 is a much more tool watchy watch than the Black Bay 54. But the big news here is that the dial has no color, just black, silver, and stark white. No fotina that we often find on Black Bays, and no pops of color either. And the same thing goes for the bezel, no color there either. So this all makes for a Black Bay that we haven't seen before. I love it because we're getting the awesome Black Bay design, but a fully modern version of it. Nothing inherently vintage here, really. I mean, if someone had no clue about this watch, they would think that it's just a modern Swiss diver. Yeah, I'm just really glad that they made this watch. It's nice to see a clean, modern black dial dive watch from Tudor that's not a Pelagos. So yeah, just more for more people to love. And now onto the bracelet, which is the first 5-link bracelet on a Black Bay diver. Well, the burgundy bezel version had it first, but it's the bracelet that interested me quite a bit, because I am really used to the 3-link riveted bracelet on all the other Tudors. I think is really great. But I was curious about this new 5-link, despite me not being the biggest Jubilee fan out there, but I figured that I might as well try out something new. The outside links are brushed and the center links are polished all the way through to the center of the T-fit clasp as well. And as always, the T-fit clasp is awesome to use, and it's just so helpful, especially when it's getting really hot outside and your wrists are expanding. But to be an actually guy, the bracelet is technically not a Jubilee, since the shape of the links are actually quite different, with them being ovals versus semicircles on the Jubilee. Tudor actually calls them 5 links, no mention of Jubilee. This means that the underside isn't flat and smooth like it is on a Jubilee. That said, it is still very comfortable to wear, and the links are fully articulating, so it drapes over the wrist quite nicely, but it just doesn't have that crazy level of comfort that a Jubilee has. And in terms of the look, the links are a little bit longer, which gives this a slightly different look, and I think this is kind of right in the middle of a Jubilee and a Z199 bracelet for all you Seiko guys out there. But in the end, as cool as this experience was, and I'm happy that I wore it because I would always be curious about this bracelet, I'm just not a Jubilee guy. So I'm like 99.99999% sure that I'll be selling this very soon in the next few weeks, after doing some videos with this, to get the version with the riveted bracelet instead. And I tried it on, and to me it was just much better and right up my alley. I mean, that bracelet made the Black Bay 41 Monochrome wear like the tool watch Black Bay that I, in my mind, see it as. So I usually don't dedicate an entire section for the movement unless there is something special, because for me in divers, so long as the movement is relatively accurate and reliable, I don't really care where it's from. There has to be something uniquely special about a movement for me to want to spend extra money for it in a dive watch. And actually the best way to explain why this movement is so cool is by showing a feature that I had no idea existed for their Metas watches. But it's called Tudor Watch ID, and the warranty card has an NFC chip in it, so you just tap it against your phone and then you have access to all your test results of your exact watch, which is awesome to look through, and it's actually a pretty good way to verify authenticity as well. It shows you what a Meta certified watch means. It's cost certified, it goes through a bunch of timekeeping, accuracy, and precision tests, and the big one being the daily average variation being 0 seconds to +5 seconds, which is fantastic because a slow watch can be irritating. But overall, my watch is performing really fantastically. On my wrist in its infinite positions, it actually is averaging about 2.5-ish seconds per day, and is doing great in greatest variation and power reserve variation as well, which is just confidence inspiring knowing that my exact watch has been tested and proven to work as well as I think it should. And it's tested for anti-magnetism. The movement and the watch itself have been unaffected by 15,000 Gauss, and mine only varies 0.22 seconds a day after that much exposure, which to me is still just insane to think about. So there you have it. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this new release, and until the next video, good day.